Welcome to Still Pretty, a Buffy the Vampire Slayer podcast from Chipperish Media. I'm confused but sort of randomly observant film scholar Noelle LaCroix.
And I'm story expert with a shrill edge of hysteria in my voice, Lonnie Diane Rich, and we are here today to talk about First Date, the 14th episode of Season 7. First Date aired on February 11th, 2003, and was written by Jane Espenson and directed by David Grossman.
Still Pretty is a fully spoiled, full-spectrum Buffy podcast, so if you haven't seen all of the show, go take care of that, and we'll spend eternity in pain because of what you did.
My feelings are changeable, but intense. Let's go on patrol. In First Date, Giles patrols with Buffy and the Potentials, telling them about how his years of training and finely honed instincts helped him sense the bringer about to kill him and get the best of him in the fight. During his barrage of bullshit, Spike attacks Giles, thinking he's the first. Spike is shocked to discover that Giles has corporeal form, and Giles is shocked to discover that Spike's chip has been removed. Later, Giles lectures Buffy on letting her feelings for Spike affect her judgment. Meanwhile, at the hardware store, Xander flirts awkwardly with a pretty Ashanti by helping her select rope to store her kayak.
Not a bad plan. You'll need stronger rope than that. Want to have coffee with me later?
Later, we see Buffy sneak into Principal Wood's office to snoop, but she gets caught and Wood invites her out to dinner before sending her out. After she leaves, he takes a bloody knife out of his pocket, wipes it off with a handkerchief, and slides up the whiteboard to reveal his custom-made cabinet of shiny weapons. Back at the house, Buffy processes her possible date with Principal Wood with Willow. Maybe it's a date? Maybe she's getting promoted? Maybe it's because he knows she suspects him and he's planning to kill her?
Well, you'll have to dress for the ambiguity.
Buffy decides that she's attracted to Principal Wood, so if he's not inviting her out to kill her, she might be into it. Then Xander busts in with his news. He also has a date. Buffy asks Willow to do a background check on Principal Wood, and Willow offers to do the same for Xander's date, but he declines.
I'm going to be an optimist about this. Why go looking for trouble? If it's going to find you, it's going to find you.
In the kitchen, Andrew is trying to figure out the microwave when the first shows up as Jonathan and gives him a job to do.
The girls must die.
In the bathroom, Anya helps Buffy get a stain out of her shirt, could be blood, could be pizza, while expressing her discomfort with Xander dating. Buffy takes the shirt and runs, only to bump into Spike in the hallway, who learns about her date and, is cool with it.
I think I still dream of a crib for two with a white picket fence. My eyes are clear.
He's totally not cool with it. At the house, Willow finds absolutely nothing about Principal Wood, which in itself is suspicious, but not as suspicious as the way Andrew is watching everyone from behind the door. Out in the darkened alleys of Sunnydale, the suspicious Principal Wood leads Buffy to what he promises is the best-kept secret in Sunnydale. In a completely unforeseeable happenstance, they get attacked by vampires. Buffy dispatches with a few of them and then turns to accuse Wood of setting her up, only to see him expertly dust the last two vamps.
I guess we should talk.
Over coffee, Xander flirts with Ashanti, and she offers some advice on getting over Anya, which Xander appreciates.
I should have taken you on a nicer date than this.
Well, I can think of something fun to do.
At the restaurant, Wood reveals to Buffy that he's a demon fighter living and working in Sunnydale to help fight the good fight against the big evil. He's also the son of a slayer, killed by a vampire, in the 70s. You've seen Fool for Love. You know what that means. Back at the Summers house, Andrew meets with the First to get instructions on how he should kill all the Potentials. He also tries to learn more about the First, like if it has allergies and when it wants to kill Buffy. The First gets wise to Andrew's weirdness and figures out he's wearing a wire, then goes down to visit Willow and the Potentials in the basement, who are listening in.
So many dead girls. There'll be so many.
Meanwhile, in the school basement, Ashanti has Xander strapped to the Catherine wheel and suspended over the seal, preparing to bleed him into the seal.
This can't just happen. It can't just keep happening that demon women find me attractive.
Back at home, everyone does a post-mortem on the interaction with the First, which didn't tell them much except that it wants the Potentials dead, and it's not time for Spike. Yet. Willow gets a text from Xander in their secret code, which either means he got lucky or his date's a demon who's trying to kill him, but she can't remember.
Well, if we play the percentages.
Something's eating Xander's head.
When they call Buffy's phone to get her back from her date, it rings in the living room, so Spike goes out to get her. He interrupts the tender moment of Wood and Buffy eating French food together and tells Buffy that Xander's in danger. Wood drives while they awkwardly travel out to the school to rescue Xander. They crash Ashanti's party, and Spike vamps during the fight. Ashanti kicks the shit out of Spike before Buffy beheads her, and then rushes to his side. Wood watches as Buffy and Spike share a tender moment. At home, Anya is worried about Xander, certain his date has killed him by now.
I thought you were all angry at him.
My feelings are changeable but intense.
Xander, Spike, and Buffy return from their adventure. Xander decides that his solution to demon women wanting to kill him is to catch being gay from Willow. While they're joking, Giles yells at them to start taking things seriously, and he's got a point. Later, Spike sits with Buffy and suggests that he should leave, since it's clear the first has a purpose for him later. Now that there's another demon fighter in the mix, they can spare him. Buffy says she can't, and he asks why.
Because I'm not ready for you to not be here.
Meanwhile, back at Robin Wood's place, he looks at himself in the mirror and sees behind him his dead mother, clearly animated by the first, who tells him she's there because he's a player now. He tells her he's there to take her out, and until then, he doesn't have any use for her. He starts to walk away until she offers to tell him who killed her.
You met him. You know him. You fought at his side.
Spike.
All right, Noelle, so here we are in First Date in our season 7 doldrums, which tends to happen when you have, not to put the blame for this on anything other than like where it belongs. But I mean, when you have a show that has 22 episodes to do in a season, you kind of get these episodes where nothing's really happening. And, usually that's okay. But then sometimes what is happening is not okay. So with that lead in, how do you feel about First Date?
Lonnie, what in the white supremacy is going on here? I thought I was upset last week. This is some next level shenanigans.
It is. It really super is. And there are some things that I like in this episode. Like, I'm not going to lie. There are some things that I like. But mostly, it's pretty terrible on both the writing front and on the being human front. So, considering that those are two of my favorite fronts, it's kind of difficult to kind of get through it. I think the first thing we need to talk about, that we need to kind of like just sit with for a little bit, is once again our recurring segment, The Unbearable Whiteness of Buffy. Again, credit to Dr. Charisse Lepre, who coined that term for me. So here we are, and, we're going to talk in a little while about the burden of Mr. X with Principal Wood, but up front, I'd like to say that he is our only major character of color, which it took us 7 seasons to get. So making him all sketchy in the first place is a bad call. And this is not to say that Black people, people of color, can't be villains. They can. Villains are some of the most fun that there is to be had in fiction, so absolutely. But when you only have one person of color, and they are the villain, you're saying something with that, whether you mean to or not. And I know this because I did it in one of my books, not meaning to. The character was awesome, and I thought that was great. So I thought it didn't matter, but it does, and it sucks. So that being, one of the things that we're doing, not to mention the fact that almost all, I think, of the Black people that we've had on the show have been murdered at one point or another. Like, none of them have survived their tenure on Buffy, I don't think.
Except maybe Dawn's unnamed Black friend, but that in and of itself is a problem.
Is another problem, exactly. So I think that these are things that we really have to kind of be aware of, And then also we have, Ashanti, the pop singer, guest starring in this episode, which is awesome, but guest starring as a demon who eventually gets beheaded. The fact that this show is, I would say, littered with Black and brown bodies, except there isn't enough representation. It's just that they all end up dying,
Yeah, and there's a difference between representation and presence, and I think that's what you're getting at with the Principal Wood stuff. Like, it's great to have this incredible Black actor on screen for so much of the season. But you're making the Black man shifty, and then for no fucking reason, which we will get into when you talk about the banana pants misdirect that is that whole thing. Like, it's like, okay, great. So we have actors, we have Black actors but they're villains or they're sketchy. Like, that's it's not representation. That's reinstating harmful ideas about the
Right. And, and the thing is, it's like, there's a difference between, diversity, between presence, and actual like inclusion above the line. And I mean, I haven't done a full, like an absolutely like conclusive study, but like going through IMDb, clicking on the people, seeing the pictures when there are pictures, white all the way through. And I think that may be part of what leads to something happening like Chow An. Chow An in this episode it's so unbelievably bad that I don't know where to start. Like she's got no character or personality of her own. The joke is she's Asian and she doesn't know what's going on and she's lactose intolerant. Which makes her a comedy mule, in which the comedy that she's delivering is where she's the butt of the joke. And it hurts to watch. And so I was thinking about this. Like, we had prior to this, I believe, 2 speaking Asian characters on Buffy. We have an unnamed, and again, unnamed means not terribly important, not important enough to name. We have the unnamed Cordette, played by Nicole Bilderback in season 3, who we killed and drank on screen in The Wish, and then undid that later because The Wish was undone, but we still killed her, And we have Xin Rong, the Chinese Slayer Spike killed in Fool for Love, although she is unnamed in the show. We get her name a little bit later in the comics, so I'm going to name her now. But in the show, she was unnamed. She was just simply the Chinese Slayer. And while we're on the hook for Fool for Love, let's take a moment to remember that this is an episode in which we see a white man brutally murder first a Chinese woman and then a black one. But I think that's it for Asian speaking characters, and we killed both of them.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So here we have Chow An brought in simply to be this comedy mule, but we're not even doing what we did with Anya, which is at least give her character and perspective, occasionally see things from her point of view. We're just playing this joke that like, oh, she's Chinese and she can't understand anything and she's lactose intolerant, which are, thin, I guess, jokes anyway. Like it's not funny anyway. So I don't know, like the whole thing.
Yeah. And it's especially puzzling and troubling because I think the humor here, using the biggest scare quotes ever, the humor here is Giles doesn't get it. Giles is being terrible to this girl. But then Giles is allowed to be like wise and insightful at the end when he's like, actually, we need to take this seriously. And it's like, yeah, dude, actually, you need to take this seriously because this young woman is a potential slayer. Like he makes the fucking flashcards like she's a potential slayer. She needs to know this. But like, you didn't think to go, I don't know, get a dictionary so you could maybe communicate a little bit. I don't know. And like, what is the point of this other than to make racist jokes? Because it's not racist jokes, but there's a better story if you have this potential slayer who doesn't speak any English and then, oh, wait, maybe the potentials who are such a wonderful group, now like are forming this bond together. Maybe they all get together and like figure out how they're going to communicate with this fellow potential slayer through this language barrier. Like there's a story there.
There could definitely be something there, but she is isolated in every possible way, like including the ability to communicate with anybody there, and that is the joke is how isolated she is like that's funny. And the thing is that this is like, yeah, if we had a character that, you know, that nobody spoke their language, and then, you know, we had people actually trying to speak their language or something like that. Like if Giles was speaking terrible Cantonese and the joke was, oh, you know, Giles is really, really bad at this or whatever. But that's like not what we're doing. But also this is a written choice. Like we don't have to have her unable to communicate in English. We could have her come in and bring something of value to the table and actually be a character, you know, in the show. But we're choosing not to do that. We're choosing to take the one Asian character we've got in a show that has only ever had 2 other Asian characters on it. Both unnamed, you know, and both killed. And then, you know, make this joke in it that doesn't have any purpose aside from mocking the Asian girl who has been pulled out of her world and brought to a place where she is in danger and she's scared, certainly. Like, there's whole... And it's funny that he traumatizes her with these pictures and then she's locked in the bathroom crying. Like we're using that as a joke. Like her trauma is a joke. Her isolation is a joke. And it hurts. Like it hurts me to watch it, you know, because I love this show and it just breaks my heart that this is something that the show spent time doing, like active harm, you know, like really active. So yeah, I find that all, it ruins so much. Like there are things that I enjoy, you know, in this episode, but it ruins a lot of stuff for me. Yeah. You know, like it just ruins a lot of, like this episode makes this episode almost unwatchable for me. It's so bad. So yeah, I don't know. So what are your thoughts overall on the narrative of this episode?
Okay. I mean, I don't know what's going on, honestly. Yeah. like that's truly what my initial sense of the story, like what the actual fuck is going on here. Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm not a story expert. Maybe I'm missing something, but it feels to me like the last 4 minutes of this episode are incredible. We get 38 minutes and 42 seconds of tomfoolery and then 4 minutes of plot. Yeah. And what's wild is that after being just the worst for the entire episode, Giles is spot on at the end with his speech about we don't have time for this nonsense about who's dating whom and everyone's dietary restrictions and sexual orientations. Like, not that long ago, season-wise, Buffy was declaring war, literally. Yeah. So when Giles suddenly, I don't know, becomes okay again for a minute and is like, look, everyone needs to stop fucking around. Like, he's absolutely right. But I also, like, you're telling on yourself a little bit, show. Like, we're 14 episodes into a season, and I still don't feel like the season has started in a lot of ways. Yeah. What are we doing? What is this?
Nothing. We're doing nothing. I mean, it is this, like, you know, mid-season doldrums where it's like, well, we don't want to get started on the actual story. So we're just going to sit here and, you know, and jazz hands our way through an episode in which it's all nothing, you know. And we, again, revisit, you know, this like yet another misdirect in this season. In my original Still Pretty video about First Date, I named the collective noun for misdirects in storytelling as a burden of misdirects, because by the time in this season, we are actually carrying a burden of misdirects. And as a reminder, a misdirect is when we as viewers are clearly led to believe something that later turns out not to be true, and not always bad. You know, last week we talked about false twists, right? Which I think I'd like to rename empty twists, because in the end, there's no change. An empty twist is when the thing that we're led to suspect is in fact not true, but also there's no change in the story. It's gift-wrapped box, all ribbons and pretty paper, but when you open it, there's nothing inside. So dead/first Giles is an empty twist. In the end, there's no change to the story, and if you lift the whole misdirect out, you lose nothing in the narrative itself. Now, you might argue that the potential twist with Dawn is also an empty twist because Dawn turns out not to be a potential, except that there is something in the box when we open it. Amanda. And Amanda being in the box explains every piece of evidence that made us think that Dawn would be in the box. So neither the Giles Mr. X nor the Robin Wood Mr. X serve as red herrings for another reality. It's basically all just psych. And that is not narrative. That is, nothing. So once again, in the pursuit of the fetishized twist, the show ends up purposely misleading us, sometimes even outright lying to us, all to get us to grab the gift box and shake it, wondering what's inside when there is literally nothing inside. And the writers out there, I have to tell you, this creates trust issues with your readers, and trust issues are death to a story because belief is life to a story. So learn from your forebears here. If you are going to give people a gift wrapped box to shake, make sure that there is something inside of it. And that brings me to, this misdirect, which we have been leading to all season, the Robin Wood is evil ? Storyline. It's one of the worst cases of burdens of misdirects in service of an empty twist that I have ever seen. I mean, we have been doing this nonsense all season. In Lessons, as Principal Wood walks away after meeting Buffy and Dawn, Buffy says,
That was suspicious.
In Never Leave Me, we have Wood finding Jonathan's dead body, carrying it out to an oil field and burying it where no one will ever find it because he is not evil ? In Bring on the Night, we see Wood returning to the basement with a shovel in his hand, and we get from Buffy,
That's some full service principling.
and later in that episode, we have him watching Buffy suspiciously, and then we have his answer to her, what kind of movies do you like? With,
Mysteries. I love finding out what's underneath it all at the very end.
God, I hate that one so much. Like, they're
all
bad, but that one? I don't know why. I don't know.
Because it's so stupid, because we have him answer this question with his back to Buffy as we see the smile of evil on his face. And then here we get Wood's bloody knife going into the cabinet of weapons, which is not unlike the mayor's cabinet.
Yeah.
And he proved to be like a really seriously evil dude, right? So then he takes Buffy out to a restaurant with an unmarked door behind an alley full of vampires. All of this to be like, he's so sketchy, which in the end, he isn't. What he is a kid who wants to kill the vampire who killed his fridged mother, which is understandable. He's just a good dude fighting the fight and apparently being taken over by the First, which is why he buried Jonathan, I guess, ? Except that when he sees his mother, this is the first time he's had contact with the First. So we can't say that his mother, as the First, was influencing him all along. He just found the dead body of a person in the basement of the school and buried it in an oil field.
And that
for PR purposes
comes up. It never, we never
and
revisit
why
that.
Why the bloody weapon knife?
What is that? That never comes
today
up either?
In this episode. We don't address that.
What the
what
hell?
Was he? Why was it bloody?
What?
And it fits perfectly in the space where it was missing in his customized weapon cabinet. So clearly it's his, and he's not taking it back from a kid who just, stabbed another kid. I don't understand any of this. It is so bad. It is a burden of misdirects. And we have all of that. And we have it a little bit with Andrew in this episode where we're like, he's talking to the First, and then we see him, very evilly watching over everybody when they're at the table, and it's so suspicious. And then that gets turned around in that, no, he's good now. He's wearing a wire.
Which,
again,
okay.
It's,
Cute though. See, I like
Andrew. Andrew's cute. The performance is great.
I like Andrew. Actually, I love Andrew. That's just, we know this at this point. We know that. I don't read the Andrew stuff in this episode quite as misdirecty as all that. And I don't know, maybe that's the difference between doing the slow creepy thing in the shadows about a black actor versus a white actor. Maybe we have a different relationship with Andrew where he's evil and shifty, but we don't take him that seriously. I don't know. I don't feel like we get a misdirect with Andrew so much.
The reason why we do And the reason why is we have like one of the things for a good misdirect in which there is something in the box, which is what we have with Andrew. There is something in the box. He is actually doing this to get information out of the first. So we've got something in the box. That's good. It's not an empty twist. But the misdirect making us think he's evil, we have him watching from the shadows with this whole evil shot, which if he is actually in cahoots with everybody there, we wouldn't have. So it violates the rule of no flag on the play, right? Because there is. Why is he staring at them? Why are we choosing? Because everything in fiction is a choice. So like you can't say, oh, but in reality, maybe he was just, or what? This isn't reality. This is a choice, a specific choice that the writers make in order to, psych us out or whatever, right? With this misdirect. If there was a reason why he would be lurking in the shadows, watching all of the potentials that actually made more sense with what was actually in the box, then okay, fine. It's one shot. The rest of it is fair play.
Yeah.
It's one shot, and that's what irritates me. But overall, compared especially to the other incredible offenses that have been made in this arena of the empty twist throughout this season, I would say, it's not as bad as the others. Absolutely pays off way more than the others, definitely. But because I'm already annoyed, it's that little piece of sand in your shoe that you're already irritated.
Yeah.
It's just going to bother you that much more. So that's all. That's my only argument. Otherwise, I'm completely with you. I think it's adorable, and I love Tom Lank and Andrew.
I love his whole affect in this episode.
Mm-hmm.
Do I believe him when he says he's going to make amends or whatever after the fight is over? No, not really. I don't really believe him.
Yeah.
But I like him trying to figure out where he fits into the world of Buffy and her extraordinary friends. Especially when he says, confidentially, a lot of her people are murderers.
I love that line.
So
and
cute.
You know what? Fair enough.
Yeah, it's a very
He starts
cute.
listing them like Anya, Spike, Willow. Yeah.
He's a very... in the not advancing the story space, I feel like Andrew, we advance Andrew's story probably more than anybody else's. Andrew reading the instructions for the new microwave is my whole heart, though.
Oh, God.
Getting the most out of your new microwave. Sweet Andrew. And no, Jonathan / the first setting the clock on the microwave is not intuitive, you asshat. I know it's literally the first evil, but come on. Also, what do you know about a microwave, you ancient primordial
ancient evil?
What are you doing? Anyway. But I love Andrew and his relationship to the Summers home and his relationship to this group of people. I love him trying to figure it out. And there's this really interesting moment where Andrew is thinking about where they put the gun. So Jonathan as the first is asking him about this. What is it that Willow brought into the house that could help you? And he's like, the new microwave? It's great. But then there's this moment where he's thinking about it, and we get this close-up of him that's so interesting, just lighting wise, because they make him look very pretty in a way that I'm not used to seeing the men on this show look pretty. And I don't know what to do with that. It's just one of those things. There were a lot of things in this episode that I'm like, that's a little thing that I noticed that I don't know that it means anything. But it just lit up my brain for half a second of oh, he looks very pretty in this shot. And I don't know, there's not really any payoff for that. There's not really, maybe in the service of, oh, he's not actually going to side with the first. He's not actually evil. Maybe it's
give us a little of that halo effect.
Little
action.
Visual foreshadowing on that. But I don't know. It's just, it was there. I noticed it. I like it. I appreciate it. I don't have that much more to say about it.
He's adorable. He's adorable. We've talked a little bit already about Giles and how inconsistent Giles is. The way he talks to Buffy about her decision about Spike, it doesn't make any sense to me. Giles has become Joyce. Giles is the new conflict vending machine. We have an adult in the house and we just have to have him push back against Buffy. But the thing is, he didn't talk to Buffy like she was a child when she was a child, And here he is talking to her in a way that does not trust the fact that she's been there on the ground the whole time, that does not trust who she has proven herself to be, you know, throughout the history of everything. I mean, you know, you have feelings for him and that clouds your blah, blah, blah. She had way more intense feelings for Angel, and she killed that dude when he was human when he had a soul, because she had to, right? So the idea that she hasn't earned his trust at this point is completely ridiculous. The idea that he would talk to her like that, if you're looking, I mean, this is the same guy. If you're looking for, you know, for judgment, you'll not get it from me, back in Surprise and Innocence. You know, I mean, come on, this is not Giles. And the idea that he would treat Chow-on like that, he would, if somebody there did not speak the language, he would find somebody who spoke the language and have them there translating. You know, I just don't, and he would know better than to, you know, I mean, the pictures are one thing, like, but they're clearly ridiculous. You know, they're clearly terrible. There's other ways to communicate. This girl is a potential who has been taken out of her home. She knows on some level what's going on. She has to, or either that or she's been kidnapped, you know?
Yeah.
Like, she has to know.
Either way, it's awful.
It's all
like, either
terrible.
way.
And it's terrible for Giles.
It's so
isn't
bad.
who Giles is.
I mean, I don't know. It isn't who Giles is. I don't know. I don't know about that. But it does seem like we do a bunch of stuff with Giles, you know, that we used to do with Joyce, that we do with a lot of the adults on this show, of just we need someone to get in the way and or not know what's going on. And it's like, but that is patently ridiculous in this situation. When Giles absolutely should be the one who knows what's going on and be, I mean, I said it already, he's the one who gives us this great, like, y'all need to take this fucking seriously speech. But then he doesn't, he's so blocked on his own not taking this serious. I don't know. I don't know. It's just not, it's not very good. It's not very good.
It's not good. And I mean, I'm not saying that Giles is perfect. I'm just saying that this feels inconsistent, even with a flawed Giles. You know, like it feels really inconsistent with who he's been. So Giles in season 7 doesn't feel to me like the Giles that we knew earlier in the series, you know. It just,
are we sure he's not the first? He could be the first. I don't know. I'm still holding out.
I think because Spike tackled him, you know.
I love that moment. I do love the moment.
Yeah.
I love any moment of unexpected Spike flying through the air.
Yes.
That is a running gag on this show that will never get old for me. Anytime.
I especially love
Spike just appears flying through the air. It is so good. It's so funny. And then both of them in unison. I thought you were the first. I thought you would.
Yes, exactly.
Why are you not hurt? You know, it's great.
Well, and then when Giles says, if you thought I was the first, why did you come running at me? And then Spike has that moment of like, yeah, I didn't think about it. Which is actually really consistent.
Actually didn't plan that.
That is peak Spike, is to just go with his gut and not think about it, you know? He's not a thinker.
I will solve my problems by jumping on them. Like, it's very... It's very good. It's very good.
It's super cute. The other stuff that I liked in this episode, I like the Buffy and Spike stuff. I love, you know, when he bumps into her in the hallway, you know, and he says, I hear you got a date. Look at me. I'm fine. My eyes are clear. I'm not dreaming of a crypt with a picket fence, you know.
A crypt for two with a white picket fence is a great line. Yes, that is good.
And then he goes on with the, you know, and the picket fence anyway, bloody dangerous. Like, I love that, you know, like joking around about the whole vampire thing. He's trying to make her feel comfortable, which I love. And then he says, my eyes are clear. I'm fine. And she's like, okay, I'm gonna move on. And then she leaves and we just get him staring off into space, you know, and you can see that it's bothering him, but it's a sweet, nice little moment.
Well, and it's super consistent, right? Because Spike is the one who's given us this speech about you'll never be friends.
Yeah.
The way we can see them in this scene trying to do we are not together, but we're going to have a friendly interaction thing. And they're both kind of uncomfortable under the surface, which I really appreciate. It's something I really love about the performance. But then, see, this is the kind of subtlety that I love that we don't usually get from this show, which is when we leave Spike there after being like, I'm fine, I'm fine, I'm fine. In his affect is the echo of the "you'll never be friends" speech. And it's just great. It's so good.
It's really, really nice. And then we get, of course, when they find out that Xander's in trouble or whatever, and Spike is like, I'll go get her. He keeps saying, I'll go get her. And then like, no, we'll just call her, all this stuff. And then when they try to call her, of course it rings because she's left her cell phone behind, because Buffy and technology, they've never been actual friends. And so then Spike is just like, okay, I'll go get her. I can smell her. I'll find her, It's kind of sweet and, and very human, for our vampire character, which is really, really nice. And then, he interrupts the date. We have all of this awkwardness with Robin Wood, during that time. And then they go and they fight together. And afterward, he's getting the shit kicked out of him by Ashanti, which is always fun to see. And then Buffy rushes to his side and she's concerned, and they have this tender moment, which I think is really nice. And when they go back, he says, I'm going to leave. You have another demon fighter. You don't need me. And the boy said that it's not time for me yet. And so let me get out of here before it's time. And she just says, I'm not ready for you to not be here. And they have this moment. And this is a moment where he understands exactly what that means, and he says, what about the principal? It shows that he understands what that means. And so, for a show not really understanding, not really, I would say, in the subtlety business, there's some really nice subtlety throughout this whole thing with Spike. And I like that.
Yeah. Spike is complicated, and he continues to be complicated, and they really use that to the advantage of the show. Like, he is delightful to watch because and it's the writing certainly, but it's also James Marsters and the way that he brings all of Spike to Spike most of the time. It's just, it's fantastic. And this is now a James Marsters fangirl podcast. So, that's cool.
Oh,
that's cool.
No.
Let's just,
this is the whole point. Spike is the reason why.
Well, and also, I need things to rave about in this episode. Like, I really do. His performance is just, is so good. And the look on his face when Principal Wood is like, how do y'all know each other? And Buffy's like, we work together. And it's just, Spike is just silent. Like, because we know, their long history of like, we're in a band together. Like, it's great. I love the, how do you two know each other? It's just that joke never gets old for me.
That joke never gets old. And if they had said we're in a band together, that would have been hilarious.
Yes.
But and speaking of Robin Wood, I think he's also one of the highlights. Now, not the way he's written, not the stupid misdirect, but I love him in this complicated thing with his mom. His mom is, of course, Nikki Wood, who we saw Spike kill in Fool for Love. And this is a woman who has been fridged twice, basically, for two men's stories, for Spike's story in Fool for Love, and then for Robin's story here, that he is out to avenge her death, and then to have her as the first talking to him. Different actress from who we had in Fool for Love. We'll let that go for the moment. But she's talking to him about, I love that, where she's like, I give you a compliment, you don't say thank you, and he knows she's the first, and he's like, I've got no use for you. And then she says, don't you want to know who killed me? You fought with him. You worked by his side. That whole thing. And then she goes, now what do you say? And he says, thank you. And that is brilliant writing. I love that end.
Yeah. Well, and it's, that reveal feels a little bit, I don't know. You called it out in the summary. And I wonder how much of my, well, of course that's who his mother is. Like, does that come from this is a fully spoiled podcast and like we know what's up here. But like, I don't know. I kind of wish I could go back and watch that again for the first time.
Right.
Because it doesn't, like, I love that scene and I love that reveal, but I think it doesn't work as well the second time through. And that's another aspect to, the twist or the reveal or whatnot, that it should, I think, I mean, for my money, it should work again.
Yeah.
But maybe in a different way.
Yeah, exactly.
And it doesn't for me. And I don't quite know why.
That's interesting. It really works for me every single time.
Really?
Yeah, I still like it every single time.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I think the thing that it does is that D.B. Woodside is so great and so charming and has been given nothing interesting to do. That scene where the first is his mother and he walks through her and he says, I have no use for you. That makes my heart flutter. I'm like, this guy. And then to flip that into such a specific vulnerability that plays into a line of conflict that's already been set up in this love triangle with the three of them. For me, that works really, really well. And I like seeing that. I like him as soon as we give him vulnerability, as soon as we give him an objective, which he wants to, get vengeance for his mother's death and he wants to kill Spike. We make him an actual character in the show. Up until now, he's just been this weird, hodgepodge of misdirects, and weird shit that doesn't make any sense, but now he's actually a real character. And D.B. Woodside, I think, is an amazing actor and he does wonderful stuff with it. But now he's actually they've given him a football to carry. And I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So you have a little rant?
I have a minor thing. A minor thing. This drives me crazy.
Yes.
And again, we've talked a little bit about how Buffy is not like necessarily, here to do the subtle thing, right? But there's this lovely moment, right? As we have Wood and he is driving and he keeps looking in the rear view mirror suspiciously at Spike, who's in the back seat and has crashed his date, right? So
yes.
He's looking in the rearview mirror at Spike, but Spike can't be there because vampire. So when he's looking in the rearview mirror and we see that look on his face, I'm like, oh, he knows now, of course, that Spike is a vampire. And so that's something that's going to throw him off because why is the Slayer hanging out with the vampire? What the hell's going on here? Yada, yada, right? They go in, they fight. Ashanti starts beating the ever-loving shit out of Spike, which is always a joy to watch. And then Spike vamps. And then we cut to Robin Wood going, he's a vampire, right?
Yeah.
Which Robin Wood would have already known because it's pretty much only vampires that are not reflected in a rearview mirror. So here we go from this lovely, subtle moment in which he is glaring at the empty space that would be Spike in the rearview mirror.
Yeah.
And Spike is looking also seemingly like Spike would know that this is going to give him away sitting in the back seat in a car.
Yeah.
Like he's got to know that that's going to give him away as a vampire if the guy looks in the rear view at all. So we have all of this and it's lovely and it's wonderful and it's subtle and I love it. And then we have, he's a vampire, as though Robin Wood is just discovering this for the first time. And I don't understand.
I mean, okay, I think he knows in that moment when he looks in the rear view.
Yeah.
And we have that great subtle, like his face just like hardens.
Right.
And it's so wonderful. But he has to say, he's a vampire. So the audience knows that Wood knows that Spike is a vampire.
That is
like, I really think that is for the audience. I think he absolutely knows the second he looks in the rearview mirror and sees nothing. But this is not a subtle show.
No, it's...
And we really have to let the audience know that they know, like, you know, we know that you know that they know that, yeah.
That is
we have
not
to
trusting your
confirm it.
audience on like a galactic level. Like you have got to trust your audience that they're going to be able to pick this stuff up. But anyway, yeah, it was a really weird moment that just kind of stuck out to me. I also really like that you picked up on a very mundane detail, which I thought was kind of fun.
I did. This is the kind of thing that I pick up on. So something I'm genuinely enjoying in this wild ride of a season is the highlighted little moments of daily life. I like that Willow is folding laundry while Buffy talks to her about the maybe a date with Principal Wood. It's never called out. There's just a basket of laundry and Willow's like sorting and folding, and they're having a wonderful conversation that I think is an example of some of the really good writing in this episode of their friendship in that scene comes across to me as very genuine.
Yes.
In the way that they're sort of teasing each other. But I love, so Willow is just doing this like daily life task, like, yep, impending apocalypse. We've declared war on the literal first evil, but like, I still need to make sure that all of these socks have mates. You know, like, I love it. I love it so much. And then when Buffy's getting ready for her date, she's having that conversation in the bathroom with Anya. I'm like, why is Anya doing the stain removal on Buffy's shirt? But still, I mean, laundry 2B.
Yes.
I mean, I wish it were a 3B. Like,
yeah.
Where is my laundry 3B?
Wouldn't that be
Is really
great?
what I'm
We have
what
a
I'm saying.
microwave 2B and we have a laundry 2B, but we don't have a 3B on any of it.
We need a 3B. We need a laundry 3B.
Yeah.
But like laundry specifically feels to me like a very, I don't know. Maybe because it is one of those tasks, those household tasks that is just like literally never done.
Yes.
Fold, put away all of the laundry, and then there's still laundry.
Yes.
I don't know.
Yes.
It's annoying. But I mean, doing laundry B2. Where is I want B3.
Yeah.
But I also have to wonder. So Anya says something about not being able to get the stain out, and it's maybe pizza. And I want to know, is this the shirt that Dawn got pizza on in Conversations with Dead People and shrugged and said, she'll think it's blood?
Yes, it is a callback to Conversations. Yeah.
It's so good. It's so good. And I think that there's something, I think part of the reason that I love that moment in Conversations with Dead People. I love this. I love the laundry here. I think the specificity of doing laundry, of doing domestic tasks, of the potentials all rooting through the pantry for snacks. Yeah. Somehow that mundanity makes all of the fantasy feel more relatable, maybe? As opposed to Buffy is a slayer who has to work a fast food job. Feels, I don't know, that feels less accessible somehow because it's like we're putting fantasy into the mundane. Like the mundane becomes the focus. When Buffy has to pay rent and full copper repipe the house and whatnot, it's the mundane is the focus and then the fantasy is kind of the backdrop. But here we've got this mundane inserted into the fantasy, and for whatever reason, that makes all of the rest of it feel more relatable, accessible, real to me in a way that I can't quite articulate beyond what I just said.
Yeah. Well, it absolutely
like
does make sense. I mean, it does like anchor you in the daily reality of, you know, what's going on here, even though there's fantasy. And I think you make a really good point in that the mundanity took over in season 6, you know, and became the focus, which is not what we go to Buffy for, you know, but to have the mundane sort of like, you know, floating on top of this really, you know, intense fantasy story, I think is the right mix for something like this.
I dig it.
Well, I'm glad. All right. So here we are at the end of First Date. Thank goodness. And I got to ask you, what is your favorite part?
Well, I'm realizing we didn't even talk about the kind of wordplay that is the title. And that the only real first date is Andrew and Jonathan and whatever.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think honestly my favorite thing about this episode is that it probably wouldn't be made today. Maybe. Because we wouldn't do the we're making fun of a character for being Chinese. I mean, God, I hope that would not happen.
I hope it would not. Yeah.
And then just not include our other potential who is a person of color.
Yeah.
Where the fuck is Rona in this episode? I don't know.
Yeah.
No, but really, I mean, my actual favorite part, like the delight in this episode for me is Andrew and the microwave manual.
It is so cute.
That's the love story that I'm here to see, honestly. What about you, Lonnie? What's your favorite part?
Is Spike and the white picket fence. I think that whole thing is just adorable. And when he says, my eyes are clear, you know, and does that just to make her comfortable. Like, that's when we see Spike's soul at work, you know, in that his goal there is to make her comfortable, and he will lie to her to do that, you know. Whereas, you know, prior to getting his soul, if he lied to her, it was to manipulate her into, you know, doing what he wanted her to do or whatever. It was never a lie done in service of someone else. It was always a lie done in service of him and what he selfishly wanted. And this is a lie that actually shuts down what he wants and puts her first. And I really liked it. All right, if you enjoyed this conversation and would like to join in, follow @Chipperish on Twitter and use the hashtag StillPretty. Or as a Patreon supporter at any level, you can join the Chipperish Discord group and chat live with other listeners and the hosts.
Hey, did you know Patreon supporters who chip in at $10 and up get to attend show recordings live? And we've got a stretch goal. Very soon, we're going to unlock the monthly Chip Chat, where Lonnie will host a private 1-hour monthly Zoom call open to every supporter to talk about whatever, no matter what amount you pledge. So if you haven't pledged your support yet, now's the time.
Speaking of supporters, this episode of Still Pretty was brought to you by the Chipperish media producers who support us on Patreon at the power producer level. These people are the reason why Still Pretty is coming to you free and ad-free right now, so thank you to Abby, Alice, Christina, Erica, Jonathan, Kevin, Kristen, Rose, Sarah, Shelley, Stephania, and Stephanie. And this week's special message for our power producers: so many dead girls. There will be so many dead girls.
While you're waiting for the next episode of Still Pretty, here are some things you can do. Write a great review on Apple Podcasts. Tell your friends about the show, or stop looking like Jonathan. You're not him. You're the first, and you're trying to get me to shoot innocent girls, but I won't do it. I'm good now. We will be back next time with Get It Done, the 15th episode of Season 7. Until then, I'm evil, and I want to do the best I can at that, so I want to know stuff.